heard that the transplantation is in, then it grows out, then it falls out, then it grows back. That's how I understand it to work.
So what, you've got to do it twice?
No, you don't do it twice. It's a single procedure. But what happens is the first hair that is grown from the retransplantation falls out, and then for some reason the second growth of it stays in. I mean, that's basically as I understand it.
Okay. Anyone in the comments who's had a hair transplant, please give us your your thoughts.
That's
give
it.
Your verdict.
That's it. You know, we're getting on because we're talking about hair transplants and, you know, the cost, the ROI of, you know, doing this work. But there we go. But anyway, I'm fascinated. Is this how it works? You basically do transplantation, hair grows normally, then it drops out, then it grows back, and that's it. Is that the procedure? Anybody know? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, welcome to Brain Food Live on Air, everyone. It is what episode is it? It is episode 361, and we're bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. And it's going to be a tough conversation to have today, folks. But it's one I think is quite necessary, given what we know about the world today and given sort of the facts of the matter. Loads of layoffs happening, obviously, with big tech in particular. I think this is a year where we once again have to, you know, get to grips with one of the more difficult challenges of leadership, which is how do you actually do any reduction in force in your team in such a way that you take care of your responsibilities for the business, but also take care of the responsibilities that you have for your staff, your team, and yourself. So that is the topic of today, folks. We've got a very grateful for our panelists who are going to come on. They've got direct experience of managing this difficult process, and they're going to share with us some information on this, on how it all works out and what they've learned from it. Anyway, let's do some sound checks before we go much further on. Folks, on Crowdcast, if you can hear and see Adam and I, do let us know in the comments whether the audio and visual is fine. Hello, Debbie. Great to see you, of course. We should be broadcasting this live across LinkedIn as well. So if you're watching this on my LinkedIn or Adam's LinkedIn or anybody else's LinkedIn, do let us know whether the audio and visual is fine there. Just drop us a comment in there. We are going to try and make this as interactive as possible, of course, because I think it's very important for this topic in particular for us to circulate as much intelligence and information as we can. Super important that we share what we know about this kind of task at hand. Okay, it looks like audio and visual is fine, which is good stuff. Let's get on with the show. Folks, we have to thank our sponsors because without Brain Food Live's sponsors, we won't be able to do this show every week. And today's sponsor, I'm pleased to say, one of my favorite companies, actually. I first came across them 2 years or so ago, and we did a founder's focus with the CEO, Maxime. Great conversation, one of my favorite sort of conversations one-to-one with the CEO. I'm very pleased to see that this company has gone on and done fantastically well with some massive global clients. And I think they're one of the ones that's going to really make a huge difference. It's Myth the Moment. How do you handle high volume applicant flow? Mackie are the business that seem to have done it. But let me not take too much more of your time because I've got one of the co-founders here and he's going to come on screen and tell us all about it. So Ben, let me see if I can get you on screen here. And he can share us some intel. Hello, Andrea. Great to see you. Who else is here? Crowdcast is good. Thank you, Michael. And there's Ben. Ben, how you doing? We're talking about hair transplants, but this Ben obviously does not need. Ben, you're on mute, unfortunately.
I did not want to make any comment on that part, so let's just move forward.
Hello. What is your product? What is your secret, Ben? How do you get this growing in the way it's growing? We all need to know. Anyway, Ben, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you and what it is you do? And tell us a little bit about Mackie, please.
Sure. So thank you very much for having us on the show. Hello, everyone. So my name is Ben. I am one of the co-founders of Mackie. I run product. And I saw that Sile from MetaView actually came with a contest last time he was on the show. So I decided to do something a little bit different, which was not to come with a contest, come directly with a gift for all the audience. But I'll get to that in a minute. Let me just give you a little bit of perspective about what we do at Mackie and what's our conviction. So basically, our convictions is that CVs are not a reliable way to make talent decisions. I think we pretty much all know that. To us, they're self-reported documents. They reward storytelling rather than skill. And now increasingly, you've got an AI system, which is basically vetting an AI document, right? So that doesn't work. And so what we want to do is change that. And actually, the topic that you brought up today, which is the reduction in force, made me think about a customer story that we have at Mackie. You might be familiar with that company. It's Wise, the British fintech. So they decided to actually re-internalize their customer care hiring globally. And it wasn't incremental, right? It was like, taking full ownership of a very high volume business critical hiring operations with very little resources. And they had to do that super, super quickly. Obviously, they had to protect quality. They had to stay aligned with the values of fairness and transparency. And so they came to us thinking that we could help. So that's pretty cool, right? And actually, that worked because they implemented Mackie. They implemented what we call a fully skill-based AI-driven process where every candidate went through a structured, validated skill screening experience. And with 2 recruiters, they managed to screen 35,000 people in the span of just a couple of weeks to hire 300 people with a candidate satisfaction of 9 out of 10, right? So even with smaller resources, you can still achieve great things. And so we like to believe that Mackie is one of the products that can help do that, but obviously there are many other products that can do that. So that brings me to what is Mackie, right? So we are an AI hiring platform that replaces CV hiring with what we call skill-first evaluation, because we believe that traditional hiring relied on proxies like past titles, brand names, and so on. We don't think that these are proof of ability. They're at best signals, but we believe that if you want to ask someone why a person was hired, you need to come up with not a story but a structured evidence method, right? And so this is typically what Mackie is about. And so what we do is we deploy either AI assessments or AI screening agents that can run structured adaptive interviews automatically. And so coming to my gift, because I promised a gift to the audience, right? Each member of the audience should have received in their mailbox one of those agents that has been personalized to them. So it's like an agent hiring for one of their roles. So they'll be able to test that agent and see exactly how they can run a conversation with an AI agent that will produce scientifically backed materials. So the output of those conversations, and obviously we'll let the audience play with the agent, but the output of this conversation is going to look like this, right? A full conversation between a candidate and an agent with a full transcript from which we are able to extract both eligibility criteria, so objective factors as to why a person can actually be eligible for this role, but also, and this is what matters, the scientific foundation as to why we believe they have the skills to do that job, right? And so these skills are measured through scientific evidence. They're transparent, they're explainable, and so each dimension will represent some part of the skill with a clear reasoning as to why we rated the way we've rated. And so this is typically how a company like Wise can screen 30,000 people in the span of just a couple of weeks with only 2 resources, precisely because you have agents that are doing the work, and they're doing the work in an auditable, explainable, transparent way. So this is what we do at Mackie, and I hope you'll enjoy the experience of playing with the agent.
Thank you, Ben. That's brilliant. Folks, check your inbox. There should be an email from Mackie people in there. And I do believe that's a personalized AI agent you can connect with. When you say have a conversation, Ben, is that like a text-based conversation or is it voice-based conversation? How is it working?
Yeah, it's going to be voice-based because, it's a little bit difficult to assess someone through a series of SMSs. So this is why we want to make sure that we can run those conversations through voice. Also because there are a couple of companies that want to proctor the sessions of candidates. So it's obviously easier to do that through voice.
Yeah. Okay, great. I mean, I've signed up, so presumably I've got an email there, so I'm going to give it a shot. I fail AI interviews. I have to say, I'm pretty regularly getting blasted out. I don't know why. Maybe my brain just freezes. But give it a go, folks. If you haven't had a go at being interviewed by AI, here's the example of how it works. And what a wonderful case study in terms of high volume hiring there with Wise as well, a product all of us know. It'd be great also to get a case study if you have that, by the way, Ben. That's a useful thing for us to share with the community as well. So please do share that link into the chat. Sort of if you can find the link to that. Brilliant stuff. Okay, MackeyPeople.com. Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Ben. Enjoy the rest of the conversation. We're going to talk about it because basically reduction in force is a reality in our game. I think we look at sort of where TA was 5 years or so ago. We were probably very comfortable with a certain size, certain number of people required to hire X number of sort of new employees. With technologies like that, very obviously, we can do more with less. We've had to reduce numbers generally across the board. So today's topic is really going to be about how we go ahead and do that. What are these tough issues? Now, before we bring on our guests, we have to review the newsletter real quick because that's something we can't forget. Adam, isn't that right? Have you read it? One of these days, you're going to say no.
Well, I noticed this episode 361. I reckon I've done about 220 of these or something like that, and I've never let you down. Even though this is meant to be a zero prep show, I always prep. So let's continue talking about the concept of AI interviews, and let's talk about what Glenn Cathy wrote on LinkedIn. He said that the paradox of this, right? On first glance, people seem to prefer to want to interview with a human over AI, right? And the reason for that is because of what I've learned about is impression management strategies. So that's like they feel like they've got the ability to use their rapport and charisma and generate influence and, make the interviewer like them. But actually, studies have shown that when given a real choice, most candidates, 78%, I think was the number, actually pick AI interviews and perform better with them. So like some of the big benefits, of course, of AI interviews are things like they're more consistent, they're less biased, they're giving broader consideration to candidates of different types, and as Ben said, there is I can't remember the exact words he used, but effectively it's about your actual competence rather than your ability to storytell. So I thought that was quite an interesting one to check out, and I recommend everybody following Glenn Cathy.
Yeah, absolutely. Glenn's a brilliant writer, and I've recommended him like multiple times, probably to the point where he's kind of probably think I'm some sort of weird fanboy. But that's not is simply the case. He just comes out with brilliant stuff. And by the way, Ben and Romain, do take a look at this link I've just shared in the chat stream. You need to get in touch with Glenn because he wrote a really, really interesting post with a new angle as to why people might prefer to perform better, shall we say, with AI interviews. But he also presented a case why certain people prefer a human interviewer because of this self-perception that the candidate thought they were able to better influence the human interviewer. So in other words, exactly as Ben was saying, you back your own storytelling capability to convert an interview where in fact maybe you don't quite have the competence for it. So again, this is just an angle I didn't actually take a look at, but yeah, I've just shared the link in the chat stream there. Definitely a brilliant article, one of my favorites from last week. Okay, give us one more, Adam, or a couple more actually, real quick.
Yeah, all right. So let's talk about the reasons why you, Hung, are not an elite level genius, despite having been to the UK's top university. But you have been too Europeanized, and the land of your ancestors, China, is much, much more dedicated to building elite genius class people in order to try and dominate international science Olympiads and things like that. AI is a national priority with all these specialized programs designed to produce like real top global level, like the best in the world founders and engineers at scale. It's a very, very intense, on the individual, but it's creating extraordinary technical depth in China. And you see things like DeepSeek coming out, producing world-class models with like much less chips and much less cost than the likes of the US large language models, really challenging the assumption that the US is the leader in this. I thoroughly enjoyed getting behind the paywall in the Financial Times, so thank you for that, and reading all about it.
Yeah, really, really interesting. China's genius plan. That was one of the best things I've read. And absolutely true. I'm not a genius, and I wouldn't say it's the failings of the UK educational system, but I can say that even though I did go to a good university in St Andrews, you know what? It was pretty slack. I managed to get through fairly much at 50% pace. And I reckon I would have fallen out in a much more strenuous, East Asian style examination system. No doubt about that. So there may be something.
You'd have thrived in it. You'd have just been boot camped every single day.
Right, I'd all kinds of mental problems. I would have boot camped my way to some sort of mediocrity, I reckon. But anyway, really interesting approach. What I thought was really relevant here was because there is already a standard way to progress in education system in China, which is basically this kind of national exam that every kid does at the age of 18. Like everyone does the same test basically, and it's pass fail, simple as that. If you pass it, you go to a good university. If you don't, you go to a less good university. Hugely determinant in terms of how your life chances go. But this genius plan is a separate track for 100,000 exceptional students that don't have to do that. They've just been identified early to say, you know what, we reckon this person has got something special. Let's not put them through the standard procedure. Let's put them through some different sort of way of education. And then you've got two ways to create excellence. And it got me thinking, do we think about that in recruitment? Because we tend to put everyone through a single gate, don't we? It's a single pipeline and a single way to assess for capability. Would it not make sense to have 10% of your intake in a totally different way to get in? Because you might have a different way of doing it. Anyway, really good to see. But yeah, I do have a read of that post. It was courtesy of Financial Times. Really good. Okay, one more, mate, real quick before we get on with it.
Right, one last one. Let's talk about the concept of talent marketplaces. I have been a big supporter of the concept of a talent marketplace for a long time. And I think it's really interesting the way that humans are now becoming absolutely subservient to robots, because the latest talent marketplace that I've just read about in Recruiting Brain Food is rentahuman.ai, where the AI agents can surf through their database of top-level human talent, such as Hung Lee, and they can access specialist skills to fill in the gaps of things that they can't do. Is this not a real seesaw moment when now we are on the database of the AI agents? Incredible.
It's crazy. I've actually signed up to it, folks. And I think everyone should. This may well be the future. So this is rentahuman.ai. We all know, by the way, if you're using an AI agent, it takes calibration, right? So a human being needs to go back and basically confirm that these are the right results. If you've used any sort of AI sourcing tool and you're screening candidates, you are the human basically training the AI to get better. So that's the idea. But then the idea that this person's created a website to say, you know what, maybe some AIs, the AIs can just source a human being then. If you've programmed an AI agent to do X, and that X activity requires a human expert to go ahead and confirm the output, then we obviously then need a human being to do that. And rentahuman.ai is, in fact, the website where you can sign up and work for an AI agent. How wonderful is that? Hey, it is dystopian for Nula. I totally agree. But you want to just give it a shot and just see what happens. I'll look forward to seeing someone who's actually ended up working for an AI agent. I'd get them on the show. Let's do a Brain Food Live on that.
What are the rates?
Far, no takers for me.
What rates are the agents offering?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the bidding works. I'm not sure how anything works. It may just be a joke site, but yeah, check it out, folks. Well worth having a look at.
Living wage,
right?
Maybe not.
Yes, maybe not. It'll be I wonder whether it'd be like Merck or something like that, highly paid. But potentially, you are training your replacement, so to say. All right, Adam, before we get onto this, it may well be you do have some experience of this particular topic. reduction in force. Have you ever had that? I'm not sure you have, because you've grown companies and sold them, haven't you? So have you ever had a situation where you've had to let people go en masse, so to say, rather than personal sort of stuff?
Not en masse. No, I mean I have had to let people go. In the past, I've had to make several people go. The communication is really vital around like what it means and what it means for the people that are remaining. Right sizing is really important. Like for every organization, it is, I believe, a massive problem for a company if the leadership are not strong enough to right size their business and they hang on to people and because they feel sorry for them or whatever. I also think it's a massive problem for any organization that is not currently got active programs to establish how they can continuously automate human tasks, because if they're not doing it, their competitors are doing it. Quite frankly, their company's just going to go bust. It's going to lose in the market, and it's just like nobody's going to win with extra headcount.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to talk about, but it is probably something we have to get good at, because the right sizing of all departments is changing. We don't know what the right size is. Okay, we seem to have people on screen here, apart from Julia, who's like a very small sort of on the bottom there. I don't know why that is, Julia, but we'll try and fix that. Let's just say hello to everyone firstly. We've got Jakob first on screen, so why don't you introduce yourself real quick, Jakob? Who are you? What is you do?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jakob. So I first cut my teeth in sort of financial services recruitment, showing my age, almost about 20 years ago now. Then ran my own agency for 5 years or so, kind of doing top tier business school talent. And then after that, moved in-house about 10 years ago and kind of never looked back since then, really. So since then, kind of expanded the remit from TA to the full HR remit responsibility. And I've worked in 4 startups basically since going in-house. And the one probably most pertinent to this discussion today was my last role at Arrival, where we kind of scaled it from 250 to 2,900 headcount over 3 years, and then very painfully had to dismantle all of that hard work back down to sort of 750 over multiple rounds as well. So that in a nutshell is me.
Yeah, great stuff, Jakob. I've just shared the link into the chat stream. I met Jakob, by the way, about 3-4 years ago, and he gave a talk on this particular topic, and I thought it was a really impactful way to describe a very difficult situation. So pleased that you're coming back to talk to us about this. Thank you, Jakob. And we have Andrea Marston here as well. Andrea, wonderful to see you. What wonderful hair you have. Good Lord. Everyone's got wonderful hair today. But Andrea, great to see you. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Okay, yeah, my hair gets bigger in the wet, okay? This is the rain hair. But I'm Andrea Marston. I am a TA director at Nutanix, cloud platform software company. I am not talking about layoffs at Nutanix. I need to make that really clear immediately, but I have managed some pretty large rifts at some previous organizations. I've worked in TA and recruitment now for about 20 years across a number of tech companies. So have been on both sides of it. I've been part of a layoff myself, and I've also had to go and make over 100 people redundant through a mass reduction in force. So not easy on both sides.
Yeah, great. And by the way, we have to sort of make that right, sort of clear for everybody. Everyone's talking about historical experience here rather than sort of experience today. So, any colleagues watching our friends on screen here, don't panic. Okay, and we have Julia Levy here as well. Julia, wonderful to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Hi, everyone. Julia Levy. I'm a talent acquisition exec. 25 years in the Fortune 500, have been laid off myself, have been a part of layoffs where I'm supporting the business to help them make the right decisions. And then I've also had experiences where I've need to do a mass layoff on my team because of business conditions. So I've been through the gamut of reductions of force, and Not the most favorite part of my job, but obviously a necessary evil to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, necessary evil, but I suspect managers are really trained to do this. It seems like it's one of those things that, like, there's like everyone's thrown in at first time. Like, is that true? Like, did any of you on the panel ever have a training as part of your management track to say, okay, this is how you do it? Or was the first time you had to do it actually for real? It was like literally you got to jump on the horse for the first time. How did it come to you guys?
Yeah, happy to jump in first. So no, had no training when first started having to do some pretty substantial riffs. And one thing that was very clear for us is we very quickly wanted to put a training pack together for the managers that we're going to be supporting as well. And there's two tracks to that. One is the process, the Q&A packs, making sure you know the details of what's about to happen. The second is the mental preparation, like what they're about to face, what are all the emotions that are going to come their way, and how to manage that as well. But no, wish I had that before we started.
Yeah. Is that the case for you, Andrea and Julia? I mean, did you have prior training to this in any way, or is it just simply a case of, look, you were trained on something else and then suddenly business went this way and you had to then you had to just do it?
There was some training. So we had some training, but only literally just before. It was the first time I had to do it. It was with the realization that we were doing these riffs because of an acquisition across the organization. And because I was part of HR, there wasn't an HR BP that could sit beside me. So basically it was, okay, we need you trained up within the next 24 hours. So it was a little intense. But I'm glad that the next big one I had to do, we had a little bit more time, and so we were able to get all the people that were going to be communicating a little bit more prepped on what it's like. But like Jakob, I think it's what you're not prepared for is how much it actually takes out of you as well. So you're talking a lot about the people in front of you that you're talking to. It's hard not to be empathetic in that position. So you really do feel it yourself as well. And that's tough.
Yeah. And that's probably the most under discussed issue, isn't it? The manager themselves, like, how do you actually look after yourself there, and how do you do it in such a way that isn't just a destructive process for you, because you've got to go on, you've got responsibilities immediately after, and you've got responsibility to yourself at the end of the day. Julia Levy, why don't we train managers for this? I mean, is it just naivete? Is it just one of these where I don't know. It's almost like, do you train to crash a car properly? That kind of thing. Is that how it works? It's like disasters we don't train for, even though obviously we should do some disaster recovery. Really, I mean, we do that in IT, don't we? We plan for things going wrong. Why is it we don't plan for this in management?
It's really interesting. I was thinking in my experiences, I think similar to Jakob and Andrea, was that when we knew that an acquisition or merger or reduction in force was coming, we would have training as part of that work and preparation. At some companies that I worked at, we had the training that we did the time before, and we'd pick it up and dust it off and update it. But it's never been in any formal manager training, not the yearly training. I would never think about it as part of my hiring training. But I think like a prenuptial and things like that, it really should be. I think how to deal with uncomfortable situations, how to deal with business dips and things like that should be part of that management or leadership training that happens across the organization. I don't have the answers as to why not. I think maybe people don't want to think about death, and they don't want to think about things like reduction in forces. Even mergers and acquisitions, I've never been through a formal training on doing that. Those are the things I like to call the missing manual, that you have a mentor or someone, or you reach out to your network and you figure some of those things out.
Yeah, you really make, I mean, again, we don't want to get into, a kind of a doom and gloom scenario, but we don't think about, the end times, right? I mean, how many of us have planned our own funerals? You remind me, I should do that, really. Someone else has got to do it. Why is it their responsibility? Actually make it easier for others. So maybe it's just a human thing, where we don't like to think of it. We don't put any resource towards it. And when it does happen, it's difficult. The reason why I want to do this show sort of this season is I think that, you know, reductions in force are going to be much more common for almost every head of function going forward, simply because organizations are transforming, they're changing. We don't know what right sizing is anymore. So presumably right sizing, when you don't know, is typically downsizing. And so we're probably going to have to get better at this. So let's move our heads towards that. How do we sort of get good at something like this? Is there like a methodology that has emerged in your own playbook that you can say, you know what, if I had to do this again, these are the steps I'm going to take? Jakob, go you first.
Yeah, so I think you know, from with hindsight and experience, solid preparation is key. What happens in reality, though, is you're under a lot of time pressure. At times, it is like, we need to do this and we need to start it within a matter of days, and so you're really constrained to how much time you have to prepare. But having a really tight process, knowing the preparation to get that process tied up, making sure that the comms the comms is one of the most important pieces of this. How do the leaders communicate to the business? How do we make sure that the comms that narrative is exactly the same throughout the whole business? And that again means training managers to make sure that they know what they can say, training people not to make promises that they can't keep because they feel incredibly awkward in situations. That's often where lots of problems happen. So I think preparation, a clear process, a really tight comms plan, and as much training as time allows.
Yeah, really good. I'm nodding away at all of your stuff here, Jakob, what you said, but Hayden in the comments has said something really interesting, which is a script can feel stilted. And then it just reminded me of some of those TikToks, you know, when people, was it a couple of years ago, sort of people were recording their own kind of redundancies, and you had this terrible Zoom experience where the manager would come out with this literally scripted line. A HR person would be next to them and they'd come out with another scripted line. I'm thinking, wow, there's no humanity in this. And even though they may be ticking the boxes from a compliance point of view, it's so much arse covering that it feels like, is there a better way to communicate with a bit more humanity? What are our thoughts there? Are we obliged to just simply like play it by the numbers because it's too high risk to get it wrong? Or is there some sort of space for us to be a bit more humane? Julia, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, I never would create a full script. We'd give talking points and things that you can focus on or to stay away from. So we would provide that guidance. We would also give people the opportunity to run through a practice scenario. So think like interviewing. I would always give someone that opportunity to practice the speaking points so that it might feel more natural from that perspective. So I think there are things that you can do to help make that a little more personable and not feel as rigid. But I think you need, from a legal and risk perspective, to keep the messaging as on point and similar as possible, because people do talk at the end of the day, and you're going to have people comparing notes on what their manager did versus another. I think something else that we always need to think about also is the people that are left after. So depending on the size of the RIF, I've been at companies that have had substantial cuts and like multiple layers, and then the survivors, and how do you handle those people with care, the ones that are at, the company still?
Yeah, really good point. I think we probably, I mean, if TA, HR, we tend to be a little bit more compliance aligned anyway. And I assume that a script is probably good, but we've got to find a way to deliver it in such a way that it isn't just reading off a paper, because that's tough, isn't it?
There is a huge amount of ways that you can deliver telling somebody that, this applies to actually if somebody's getting fired as well, but if they're being made redundant, there's a huge amount of things that you could say in the course of being empathetic that actually contradict the intention of the task, and that could leave you up for loads of different ways of being sued, quite frankly.
Do you mean to say, if, let's say, I'm being empathetic, and I'm just trying to imagine you being empathetic, Adam, but are you trying to say stuff like, you know what, it's not you, you're a brilliant candidate, you've done brilliantly well, but we have to let you go, and then suddenly that's recorded, and then it's like, hang on, it's not about performance then.
If it was my choice, I wouldn't be letting you go, or words like that. They are the sorts of things that people can go and quote in like litigation.
Yeah, you'd be live streamed as well. Never mind getting quoted. I mean, this is probably recorded. It's probably blasted out. There's no control on that. So yeah, you can't have you can't have a weak personality doing it. And even if inherently maybe you are a weak personality, I consider myself a weak personality, by the way. But if don't like confrontation, etc., don't like people crying on me, all these things, but if you're that type of person, you kind of got to think, okay, you can't allow your natural sort of inclination to be empathetic to actually get you into trouble. I think that's probably right, isn't it? Wouldn't you say, guys? I don't know. I'm agreeing with Adam. I find myself shocked at this, but
I think people are generally really uncomfortable in these situations. Not many people are comfortable in this situation, or do it on such a regular basis that they've developed a muscle that's really smooth in these scenarios. And so I think people's natural inclination to be empathetic does, unfortunately, those fillers, those things that come out, tend to be things which aren't actually helpful in the process. And so, unfortunately, a script might sound robotic, but at least it doesn't give people any misinformation or crossed wires about exactly what the process is and what's happening.
Right. Let's go on, Andrea. Go on.
Yeah, in my experience, you've got a script because it's really clear why that riff is happening, and so you have to be hitting those points. But the reality is, we're talking about empathy and what you can do and prep for this. On the day, you've just got to get through it. But before that, it's coming. It's never a surprise, and you've got plenty of time to actually prep those people you're going to be doing the riff to. And it's not about, giving them a heads up, you're going to be made redundant. It's about if they've got any kind of commercial sense, you will know that this is coming, that there's going to be a reduction in force, that there's probably going to be some layoffs happening. I would question whether anyone in an organization where there's been mass layoffs has not thought this might come. So that's where we need to do more work.
That I think for the managers, that's probably correct. But for the individuals being impacted, it's not always correct. And I heard somebody who worked for an RPO company we all know, who told me a couple of months ago or a month ago that he was named in the company all hands on the Friday as having been an exceptional performer, and then riffed on the Monday. Like out of absolute, did not expect it, having been there for years. So yeah, I think for managers, they probably should know, but on the other side, they don't.
It comes down to even maybe even managers get made redundant. Actually, the management tier has been a significant chunk of the redundancies that we've seen over the last 3-4 years or so, with this flattening of organizations, probably as a result of artificial intelligence reducing the requirements to carry information up and down the ever thinning pyramid. Is this? It kind of leads us to who is how transparent is the decision made on who is let go. So your friend, using your example, Adam, probably felt, look, there's no chance it's me because I performed this, that, and the other. But clearly the calculation as to why this individual was let go maybe was something that he didn't think about, which is probably cost. Maybe he was an expensive resource, and that was the reason. The latest tranche of Amazon sort of layoffs had a lot of super tenured people let go, and they were all taking to social media saying, I couldn't believe this. And then you think, hang on, it's got to be the numbers. It's got to be purely the fact that they're sort of heavy on salary. So how do we make the decision as to who to let go? Is it purely finance says this, or do we have levity? How does it work? Is there a scenario where they come to you and say, you got to lose 5, you choose out of your 10? Is that how it is? Nods on heads there. So that's how it works then, right? Crikey.
It can be location as well, right? It's, this is the policy you've got to follow, and then you've got to make your org fit.
Absolutely. To to the example of somebody being a top performer on Friday and let go on Monday. And it's what the new business objective is that you have to basically realign the new org towards. And so what the objective was 2 weeks ago and what it is tomorrow can be entirely different. And so just being a top performer in your particular part of the organization doesn't necessarily protect you from the axe, unfortunately, because it's just that change of priority. And I think the whole thing about being defensible, should anything go to court, it has to be defensible. And defensible means, can you honestly justify why this person was made redundant versus this person? And the way you do that is saying, these are the new business objectives. The best way that we can achieve those objectives is by having this type of skill set and this type of experience, and that's why this decision was made. So it's very much down to the sort of the managers and the leaders. Yes, the number comes from finance, but the rest is very much down to the orgs.
I will say I love that across the pond you go through consultations, and it is a much more structured environment, whereas in the US you're employment at will, and in many states, not all. And I think there's a little more loosey-goosey there sometimes, whereas I think about when I was at CommScope and it was a reduction where I had to get permission to let my management team get involved to help really make sure that as we're making some of these decisions that we're looking at people's performance, and pay. Like, it was a lot of different variables, but that we did have that structure that was defensible if there was a situation. And most of the organizations that I've been at have been a part of that. But I'll say with the CommScope one, I got my managers involved. We gave my CHRO the list. They were asking me, am I on your list? And they weren't on mine, but I didn't know what happens when this, what conversations is the CHRO happening that I'm not involved in. And then a week later, ahead of the RIFs, she's calling me and saying, the list I gave her was like 50% of my team. The list she gave the CEO was 70% of my team, including me. And that's just the reality of business, especially in a financial situation. They weren't hiring. They didn't need the kind of team. They moved the team over, and
it goes without saying that obviously the employment law environment is going to have a big determining factor in all of this. There may be kind of a best practice that runs across the piece, just how to be human, how to lead in how to efficiently get something done, but do it with humanity. I think we'd all agree that's probably what we want to do. But obviously, there's more a penalty or risk of penalty of getting it wrong if you've got strong sort of workers' rights and so on. So yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, Julia. Let's move on to talk about how you make the decision from the team. Like, the scenario is you've been told you got to lose 5 out of 10. How do you do that? Is it purely based on performance? Do you look at things like disparate impact? So for instance, let's say you've got an average to medium performer, person probably be on the level needs to go. You realize actually he's supporting a family of 6 or something, and this person losing income is actually a lot of people losing income. Do you think about that? Is it our role to think about that? Do you think about team cohesion? Like, maybe you have someone who is an individually poor performer today, but that person is involved in a team that is perhaps you've discerned as a toxic team, and you think, what, the potential's there, we could rebuild this person somewhere else, but we want to keep them. Like, how do you make the decision? Is it purely based on a calculator, or is there some human judgment applied here?
Tons of human judgment is my answer to that. Absolutely, lots of it. And again, to my former point, it's about what we're trying to achieve moving forward. I might have the best tech recruiter I've ever hired in my entire life in my team, but if we're going to be doing very little tech recruitment and I need somebody who's actually much better at being able to hire across 3 or 4 different verticals, and they're a better sort of stakeholder manager, that person will probably be my choice over, as painful as it is to let go of the best tech recruiter you've ever had. So there's loads of nuance depending on the situation.
Yeah. I always looked for the agility and flexibility of the people I was joining, because if you've got a much smaller team, they're going to have to do a lot more. And so you need people that have got that much more of a utilitarian play. But also you usually need to have a mix of different levels as well. So, you know, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm getting rid of these amazing recruiters that are top of their game, but I can't keep everyone that's a principal, for example. I've got to slice the organization all the way through, which also means getting rid of the managers. And it's really tough making those decisions, especially when you know them personally, you know what their background is. And to take yourself out of that is horrible, because you know that you're going to be absolutely destroying their lives and there's nothing you can do about it. So you can't help but feel for them. So it's horrible.
Do you ever get the opportunity to counter offer, like with a business case? So you're told you got to get 20 out of this team, and you can go back and go, no, I only want to get rid of 6 out of this team because here's what we're going to be able to do to fulfill whatever the business objectives are, or anything like that. Can you counter offer as a manager, as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I've moved people around. You know, I've tried to fill the holes in other places, and if you've got a good business case where you can say, right, this is the impact. I mean, it's all about money at the end of the day, isn't it? So if you've got a business case, then fair enough. I've also, and I think probably, I wonder if the others have done this as well, where you know it's coming, so you've actually ended up holding on to a couple of people, knowing that when they're going to ask you to cut 5, that you haven't made any cuts too early, and then you end up having to cut 7 because you already let 2 people go in anticipation. So trying to do the right thing for everyone is a lot of mind games going on as well.
Yeah. To Julia's point as well, I would say actually the UK system of consultation has resulted in lots of changes to what the leadership first actually asked for. And that's because, you know, you have to make certain decisions top down, but actually the amount of context bottom up that then gets fed in to the leadership has actually made like quite drastic changes to what the original plans were. So I think hats off to the UK system for that and for giving the time to allow those conversations to genuinely happen and actually create some change.
When I've been in organizations where I knew, like at CommScope, that financial distress was going on in the company and that we were going to be doing layoffs, I also would manage via attrition. So if there were certain seats, someone left because they knew, I mean, you can't hide a company's financials, right? Or some companies can, I guess. But I wouldn't backfill certain roles because I knew that would help the larger picture. From that perspective. And I had something else that was so brilliant and I forgot what I was going to say. So
it'll come back to you, Julia. Don't worry, it'll come back to you.
Like 2 hours from now.
You know what? Pop me an email on it. I want to get all of the juice out of this one, Julia. I'm very tempted to just go with like the spreadsheet approach. I can now understand why it is easy to go on some kind of just single broad rule to avoid having to individuate these decisions. You know, to be able to say, look, we've just drawn a line under the on tenure. It could be, you know what I mean, the first come, so last in, first out policy, because that's fair, and therefore it's not a human decision. It's literally the system. Or it could be on salary, where you say, you know what, we've just looked at, you know, what we're looking to get revenue per employee, and we've just calculated the numbers, and you're too expensive, mate. Sorry.
That's not, it's kind of like, is that the best for the business though?
No, it's not. I'm not suggesting we do this. I'm just kind of applying. I guess I'm kind of extrapolating my own cowardice and trying to think. Okay, I can understand how people might invoke these rules in order to avoid having to say, you know what, I've made the decision that we're going to go forward in this direction. It's on me, and in fact, I've decided to let you go because that's tough, isn't it? Jakob, you got experience to share?
It's tough. But it's absolutely the right thing to do. And I think the more that leaders can show up, take full responsibility and absorb the heat and the direction from everybody as much as possible is the right thing to do. The further you go down, the less people have had influence over those decisions to let them be in the firing line of the questions and the whys. I actually think, the most brutal part that I've ever had to do for my own team was reduce the team from 37 down to 17. And I had managers within that team. But the meeting I called with my group was to say, all of these decisions are mine and mine only. Any questions should come directly to me. Please come and speak to me. I'm the main source of the decision making. And I had managers messaging me saying, I'm so grateful for that, because I don't know how I would have handled it. And the truth is, I lent on them for insights, but I made the ultimate decision. And I think more leaders that can do that, I think it supports the rest of the organization.
And that lends into the how do you learn how to do this, right? I meant you involving your leaders in some information, but you made the ultimate decision. In my CommScope experience, I got permission to read my management team in to help make some of those decisions. At the end, it was my ultimate decision with the CHRO, but it also gave them exposure to this process.
Do you know what? That sense of ownership of the decision. What did you say, Jakob? The source of the decision is me. I think that's a very powerful thing to say, isn't it? Because you're not, as I say, the alternative is to blame the system, blame the spreadsheet, blame the financials, blame the external market. All of that is kind of it doesn't really make a difference. What makes a difference is to say, look, listen, I did make that decision. It's me. And I think that's courage. That's really good.
Got some grey hairs on the chest for sure, though, no doubt.
I just want to make a quick point, which for those that are on LinkedIn, for example, won't see some of the chat. Michael made a point, which is that if the firm doesn't have the money to pay the people, it enables getting on with it, just enables everyone to move on, and it's painful, but less so than waiting. And my response to that is that if you're a company director, especially if you're a CEO, but if you're a company director, your commitment is to the company. It's not to the employees, unfortunately. They are just by default the second priority. And so, you need to make sure your commitment is to making sure that the company is successful for shareholders. And that is the director's commitment. Otherwise you're risking, if you don't get on with it, you are risking the organization.
Yeah, no question, that's true. Yeah, brutal but true. And there's also a case where there's different circumstances where the rifts happen, isn't it? Because I think if the company's on the verge of bankruptcy and it's collapsing, everyone can see the fire, the closing signs coming up. We all probably are looking for the exit sort of door already. Where it's most difficult, I think, is when the company is successful. The Amazon classic example. I mean, they're not in danger of going under. They're actually, massively in profit. They're just reshaping their organization for what future they see is going forward. That's when I think is you've got a different flavor of what the rift means there. Yeah, super interesting. Okay, let's kind of by the way, folks, I should do this. I've forgotten how to do this recently, but we've got to get back to it, because one of the reasons why we do Brain Food Live and do a live stream is because we want to make sure conversations flow through the ecosystem. We want to make sure everyone is heavily networked, better networked before having watched this show than they were before. So we want to make sure that if you want to continue this conversation, please do so with the people that are also watching and listening and learning with us. The way to do that is quite straightforward. Grab your LinkedIn URL, share it in the chat stream if you're watching this in Crowdcast, and then connect with everyone else who's done the same. If you're watching this on any of the LinkedIns, I think Adam Gordon's LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, probably Rob Walker's LinkedIn. If you're watching it on any of those places, do the same thing. Grab your LinkedIn URL, chuck it in the comments thread there, and then anybody else you see do that, they're basically signaling, look, I'm happy to connect with you, and potentially that's a person you could talk to about this topic. Because I think there's probably tons of people that are sitting there having to deal with this, totally feeling that they're by themselves, whereas in fact there's a huge ecosystem of collective intelligence you can call upon that might be able to help you with this. All right, let's switch tack into actually, before we do the how-tos, let's talk about AI, particularly how AI is a decision-making support tool, isn't it? Are we going to get to the point where artificial intelligence plays a bigger role in terms of determining how many people are let go and who gets let go? And how does that then change the human decision-making aspect? Do you think the human judgment aspect is going to recede in the in the ongoing future as artificial intelligence learns more and more about how our businesses work, and it could, objectively, quote unquote, point to certain decisions being correct. What are our thoughts on that? Adam, I'd love you to get your thoughts to kick off on it, actually.
I mean, the answer is yes, definitely, because it simply accelerates our ability to understand the data and analytics. We already probably have the information, but AI just makes it like, it can make it a 60-second job rather than a 3-hour job to really understand, where the profitability in the business is coming from, which areas are not contributing to top or bottom line growth or product development or whatever the company's objectives are. So I think it just accelerates managers' ability to really understand what's going on in the organization and make the right decisions.
Yeah, and quicker may be better. Sort of say, like, quicker might be. Sorry, Julia, I'll let you come in a sec. Yeah. But quicker might be better with the AI. And I'm just thinking also, if AI is the way Sir Adam describes it, you might sort of get away from having these big chopping situations, because AI may in real time be able to identify what you've got to do in terms of business shape and make sort of smaller decisions all the time, I guess. I mean, go ahead, Julia.
Oh, I was going to say, I could imagine running all my data into AI to kind of analyze based on, performance and metrics and KPIs and all of that. But it shows the what and not always the how. And there is that bit of people element in there as well. I've had recruiters that had great metrics, but how they showed up and how they did some of it really put off candidates or hiring managers. So the commentary that was coming back that we'd then have to dig into and coach and train. So I think there's layers to using it. I think you still need that human behind it, right? I wouldn't want AI making the decision, and most companies don't, but I think it can help run through scenarios and things like that at a better way than I ever could.
Yeah, it can model it out, couldn't we? Because pre-AI, you're sort of making these guessing decisions, and we've made mistakes like cut too early, with cut too few, etc. AI should help make more accurate decisions, hopefully. But yeah, very interesting where we're at. Andrea Marston, your view on artificial intelligence? How has it changed sort of the risk situation from a manager's perspective?
I think there's a real. I haven't seen it yet because we've not gone through a RIF since AI has really come into this part of it. But every time you go through a RIF, you're trying to. I mean, my TA team has always had to work through are we able to find them roles elsewhere in the organization? What about the reskilling and all that sort of thing? So you try and reposition as many people as you can. It's in the business interests, in the individual's interests. It's all good, and that piece of trying to match people up with completely different roles than they've been doing, that's going to get a lot easier if we are using AI with our skills and how long is it going to take for someone to ramp up in their new role? Is that going to make more sense than going fresh out to market? So I think there's a real potential there for the reskilling of our internal population, especially as we go through these risks, because they're never going to go away, are they? So we just need to be better at being able to do that at scale. And in my experience, even though you've got the consultations in Europe, you've still got a limited amount of time that you've got to go through this. So depending on the country, you've typically got 3 to 4 weeks to be able to get someone into a new role before they get rolled off, and then you can't hire them again for X number of months. So it's really time pressured, and I think AI's got a real potential to help with that.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Jakob, go to you on this AI impact. I mean, let's teleport you back 3-4 years ago. You had to make those decisions. How does AI change those things? I mean, what do you reckon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it can support with better modeling, understanding the numbers better. But let's be clear, AI can support with the data that it has. And there's a huge blind spot that the AI does not have, which is the data that us as humans retain from seeing how people show up on a daily basis, the impact they have, the cultural impact. That is stuff that is very rarely actually recorded in any way, which can be used by the AI. So it can definitely support and speed up the process, but they should never be able to make the final decisions.
Yeah, institutional knowledge, Jakob, the sort of tacit sort of information, implicit information, the stuff that's never written down, never documented, but this is how complex systems work. Human beings that are embedded in those systems will definitely know more about it than that. Okay, we've got 1 minute left, but we're going to just extend it just a little bit further, because I want to go to, what did you learn, and how would you get better at sort of this difficult challenge? And maybe some of the people listening in would want to improve on their ability to manage this tough challenge. Maybe some people are confronting it for the first time. Maybe they just simply want to get more prepared. So what's the advice? One bit of takeaway you would say to that audience? Jakob, let's go with you first.
I think training the managers that will be involved to understand that they should be extremely careful about the potential they think they have to make changes or to make promises, because that's where some things have really fallen over in past processes. I've seen managers feeling like they have the power to make a change, and they make those promises, and then those changes can't happen. That is the worst possible outcome, to raise somebody's expectations and then not to be able to deliver on those. So I think it comes back to manager training and process.
Yeah, really good. Trainer managers so that they're not sort of promising stuff that they can't deliver, because that's crushing to the member of staff affected. Okay, Andrea Marston, your takeaway?
I would advise any TA manager trying not to be reactive to the workload and then just hiring extra people that you're then going to have to lay off later on. So don't overhire in the first place. And with that, it is about trying to create more flexibility in your team so that you're able to move people into the right place. Then that's going to mean you're going to have less rifts to do in the first place. And then look at supporting everyone. It's everyone that's getting involved in it. What can you do that's going to make things easier? I love the fact that I've helped so many people go and find new jobs. We're recruiters at the end of the day. We've got great networks. So do as much as we can to actually help those people go into new roles.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that as the part two. Like, in fact, there's loads of things we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about the people who are left. We haven't talked about how you can support people going forward to the next stage. And in fact, some of the good examples of where people have done reduction in force well, those are big components of it. How do you actually help people progress to the next stage in their careers? Maybe a room for part two on this. Julia Levy, what's your one takeaway you want to give to the audience about how to do RIFs better?
I think we touched on it at the very beginning, is that it's not part of training for your teams and your managers, and that we should be building that into leadership and management training. If someone gets promoted into a manager role, include those difficult conversation type scenarios and start normalizing. Not that you want to be doing layoffs and RIFs, but it happens in mergers and acquisitions also. So start normalizing those types of activities and conversations sooner, so that maybe you're not having as many issues during the processes.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's like, listen, different institutions do disaster recovery as part of the thing. We need to have that within our business. We need to prepare for all eventualities. Okay, thank you so much for our wonderful panel. Jakob Zolinski, great to have you on the show. I think your debut, definitely bring you back if you're for it. Andrea Marston, you're a favorite here, so we'll definitely bring you back whenever you need to come on to the show. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Julia Levy, great to see you, and thanks for getting up so early to join us for the show. We'll definitely get you back if you're up for it as well. Okay, that's about it, everyone. I hope you got some value from this session. I hope I wouldn't say enjoyed it. It's a tough conversation, but it's important we have conversations of all types on Brain Food Live, because we are in a world that is changing so rapidly, and a lot of those changes are going to be deeply uncomfortable. And one of the things I think we've got to all get more comfortable with is that sense of discomfort. Our comfort zones basically have evaporated. Okay, that's about it. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the show, follow the channel. If you're watching this on Crowdcast, we do this every week. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, go over to my profile and follow the profile there. Essentially, I host Bring Food Live via a LinkedIn live every week, and you can just watch it there if you prefer. Okay, that's it. We're back next week. We're talking. What are we talking? We're talking about moving from talent acquisition to talent operations. Is that the future of the function, folks? Got a really interesting bit of research from our friend Jamie Leonard with the RO100. I want to bring on some heads of TA that do think that perhaps the A is going to change, and we're going to be much more of a talent operations function going forward. Join us to find out what all that means. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thanks for watching, everyone.